on my end. You're doing it all.
Nope.
All right.
Yeah, so you just sit there and talk, and I'll intro, and we will get started. All right. Tonight, we are thrilled to be joined by Thomas Smith. According to his Twitter bio, Thomas is the host of many famous podcasts, but is famous for nothing else. Thomas is also a new parent, so congratulations, I'll say it in front of our audience, on the birth of Opening Argument Smith. So we assume you have feet, even though we can't see them, have to get that in right away, and welcome to our show.
Oh, ha ha. Very funny. Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. I always forget about my Twitter bio. I wrote that a long time ago, and the joke was like, I'm famous for this, but I'm also famous for nothing else. And I like list all my podcasts, but I've had to change it like a bunch of times because I've had so many podcasts through the years. But yeah, no, that's funny. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So before we get into, the fact that nothing has been going on in the atheist and skeptic world in the past few weeks, can we, I assume most people that are listening and watching know who you are, probably listen to your shows, but can we just do a little basic intro stuff, like how you got into this whole podcasting world where you're super famous?
Yeah, sure. I go under the assumption that no one knows who I am ever. So, I started in 2010. I was kind of into the whole atheism thing. I was reading all the books that everybody was reading, and I thought it was super fascinating. People were saying things that I had been thinking, but in a way better way, and obviously, and plenty of thoughts I had never had, but just explaining the whole atheism thing in a way that I found really mind blowing. And so I was getting into it, and I had decided to read the Bible. I'd never read the Bible before in my life. I'd just heard little bits and pieces. I was raised nominally Christian, but not very hardcore. Just had to go to church until the deal was I had to go until I was in high school. Then it was my choice, which meant I never went again.
Same.
It was something my mom liked and wanted to do, and it was hard. I know she wanted me to, but I just could never. It was just so boring. Like that's the thing. But I decided in 2010. I can't honestly answer why I decided to do this or why I stuck to it. But I just was like, well, I'm reading the Bible. I consider myself, kind of a funny guy, and I thought podcasts were really cool, and I had some equipment for music actually. And so I had some good recording equipment, and I thought maybe I'll just try doing a podcast of the Bible, and at worst it'll be an audiobook, and at best, maybe some people find it interesting, and I make jokes along the way. And so I started that in 2010, and the plan was to finish it in a year. And the Bible is so bad. Is this a cursing show or?
Oh, it's a cursing show. It's really
absolutely
so fucking bad that it took me 6 years to finish that podcast. But over the course,
good job for finishing the podcast.
I did finish. I'm proud of it. It was hard. Oh my God, it was hard. It was hard to read. I mean,
it's a shitty book. It's not even a good book. The characters suck.
It's so bad. It's really bad. That's why no one has read it. No one has any idea what's in it. No one's read it except me. I'm the only one.
So congratulations, and sorry that you did that, but congratulations on finishing.
Time flies. It really does. And so over the course of that, though, I started another show because I didn't want to be limited to the Bible. So I started Atheistically Speaking, and through that, I met Andrew Torres and started Opening Arguments. And then I got tired of people, of sort of the stigma of atheist in the title, and the fact that I was always a meta atheist podcast anyway. I didn't want to do a whole lot of covering basic, like debates or that kind of thing. I wanted to branch off into science and philosophy and politics and everything. And so I finally changed the name. I'm so glad I did. Is once I changed the name to Serious Inquiries Only, or once I even announced I was thinking of changing it, I announced it to my patrons, and 100 people were like, "Oh, finally, I can share it with my neighbor." And I was like, "Damn it, I should have done this a long time ago." And I got a little bit of people mad that I wasn't taking more ownership of atheism, and the fact that it shouldn't be a stigma, and I totally respect that. I do think we should do our best to normalize it, and I totally support that. But I'm not really. My show hasn't ever been about that, and I just want to be able to book whoever I want whatever scientist, I don't care what religion they are, you know, if they've written a book or they're a scientist or they're an academic, I want to be able to talk to them and not worry about it. And I decided for me, that's where I wanted to go. But I don't begrudge anyone who would think like, oh, you should have stuck to your guns and been more about atheism. You know, it's just because it's not what I wanted to be covering. It's not that I don't agree with those goals.
Yeah, no, and I mean, your show is a great example of kind of covering the different bases of atheism, science, skepticism, talking to all kinds of people and just putting different viewpoints out there. And to me, you're definitely one of the, like, if we're having a guest that's been on other shows, you're kind of one of my go-to shows for listening to interviews beforehand. Like when we had like Michael Shermer on, I definitely listened to.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You guys, because I didn't get around to catching that, but I heard really good things about your interview.
It was something.
Events. It happened. It occupied time and space.
It was.
And he's, I mean, that's not to make fun of.
No, he was a really good sport.
That was the weirdest fucking experience of my life.
Right? Like, okay, so you felt that way too afterwards, where you're just like, huh,
yes,
that was a thing that happened.
Like, this would be harder to have him just be like, oh, you're right about everything you're saying. Like, oh, okay. But in some ways, it was more disappointing because he's gone right back to what he said pretty much, even though when I record with him, it's frustrating. I would rather he fought me a little bit if it meant we were actually having a meaningful dialogue. You know, because he came on twice. Didn't I talk to him twice?
Yeah, you talked to him twice because I listened to both of them. I did. I was on a road trip, so I was able to.
Good point. He was nice as could be. Yeah. Nice as could be. He was, good points. Oh, we should, talk more. And I respected that. But like, what? Like, the editor of Skeptic magazine can't exercise a little more caution in like his tweeting and what he publishes on the.
No. And so this is what I want to kind of start with asking both of you guys, because we're going to talk skepticism for a second, because what does that even mean right now? Like, legit question. What does it mean?
Depends on who you're talking to. Yeah. Does it mean we take one professor's view of what happened at a university none of us had heard of 5 minutes ago and run with that as a narrative of what's happening in the entire country? Or does it mean not that? Does it mean like maybe investigating questions a little bit? Not to say like, I don't even want to pretend that I have like the neutral view, because the people do that. I have the neutral skeptic view. I don't. I have my biases. I'm very liberal, and I'm very, as the last like year, maybe year or two, I've become very sensitive to social justice issues, just because I'm seeing these patterns of what's going on, especially with the election. I mean, come on, like that's when atheism in and of itself became a little less important to me. Like, it's not to say it's not important. Like, I don't mean to say that, but for me, like, that became like, okay, this is a bit of a side concern for me now. And looking at the war on drugs and mass incarceration and the kinds of groups in our society that are just trying to gain acceptance, and looking at the overreaction on the other side. So when I started trying to just skeptically digest these things, I became labeled an SJW. Now I'm proudly an SJW. I don't give a shit. Whatever, you can call me. I don't care. But like 2 years ago, I wasn't. Like, I was just a guy who like kind of wanted to look into stuff, and I would investigate these claims, and just by investigating them, I would become an SJW. And I think that tells you something about the dogma that's going on in some of skepticism right now. Like, if you're against there's a strong narrative in the movement that there's a postmodern threat to academics, and there's, like all the feminists are just a bunch of cultural Marxists. There's these buzzwords you hear, and it's funny when you track them down. You hear people use certain buzzwords, and you're like, where are you getting this? And then it's so revealing when you finally find the source. It'll be Jordan Peterson. It'll be, and that one took me a second to track down. I didn't realize so many atheists are following Jordan B. Peterson, who, if you ask him whether he believes in Jesus, it's hilarious.
Didn't he go through a whole thing?
Yeah, he rails on postmodernism, so ruining everything. Postmodernists, those feminist postmodernist cultural Marxists. Then somebody asked him like, "Hey, do you believe in Jesus?" And he's like, it depends on the words of what is truth. Are we here as you and I? Are we here? Faith? Is it what means? Like, what?
Just word salad, philosophy word salad for a second, Jordan B. Peterson style.
Talking about. It's unbelievable. He's an atheist icon right now for half the I don't know the numbers, but a lot of people. And he's a source of all these buzzwords. Postmodernism, which I covered on my show with Aaron Rabbi, who does
Embrace the Void.
Embrace the Void. Yeah, I love that guy.
Such a good podcast. Yeah.
I'm so glad to be friends with him through podcasting. It's one of the best parts of doing this job is meeting really smart, cool people. I haven't met him personally, but just online. But he came on because he has philosophy background, and he talked about the fact that postmodernism it's just a category of thought that involves questioning previous assumptions. Like it just as the movement before it, which I think was modernism, and the one before that, the name I'm blanking on the name of the one. But it's not. No one goes to like postmodernism school. They just like if. Over the course of a time period, people were labeled postmodernists because they happened to fall after modernism, and they thought modernism had some flaws. That's all it is, and that's how humans have been doing things forever.
Evolving ways of thinking.
Yeah, like and there is such a thing as postmodernism gone crazy. Sure, there is such a thing, but this is getting labeled. These buzzwords like enlightenment values and all this stuff. Like there was a time in the 1800s or the 1700s or whenever it would have been where everything was right. Like everything was science and everything was white people and everything. Like that's the time where everything was great. It's not that dissimilar to Make America Great Again in a way. I mean, as much as the people would probably hate me for saying that, like this whole going back to enlightenment values, it's like, really, there's a lot of shit going on around that time that I'm not a fan of. But anyway, sorry, I branched off. What was the question? Oh yeah, skepticism. People aren't skeptical. They really aren't. They really aren't skeptical.
Yeah, the question was skepticism because it seems like even from our interview with Michael Shermer that there's sort of the old school, guys who founded Skeptic Magazine and were debunking Bigfoot and stuff.
It felt like, and of course, nobody listening to this, and you guys don't know this, but it felt, talking to Shermer felt a lot like I was talking to my dad. And that's not an insult to either one of them, but my dad's a libertarian. He doesn't know that he is, but he is. And that's what it felt like talking to Shermer. A lot was like, he may not identify as that himself, or I don't know, and I can't.
I think he does, actually. I'm pretty sure he is a libertarian.
He is, yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, he is. So it just seems like there's a little bit of a difference in values and what's important. And we were trying to explain to him, I think, or ask, is it time for skepticism to embrace and advocate for social justice issues? Because we all know Bigfoot isn't real.
Yeah. Well, that's so excellent. I think my favorite is Eli Bosnick on this when we've talked personally, and I don't remember if he said it on the air or not, but he said that like atheism is everybody getting like the easiest question ever right. Maybe it was Andrew. I'm mixing it up. But somebody said that, and it's good. It's like, it's true. These questions, in reality, they're pretty damn easy. Now, there's a lot of interesting stuff about them, and again, and another thing that I have to keep realizing from time to time is, just in everything, a lot of people aren't like me. A lot of people, obviously, they don't have my experience where I was never really that religious to begin with. I kind of tried to do it, but I couldn't really do it, so I don't care. There's a lot of people just now deconverting, coming out of a shitty Christian bullshit, and it's like, for them, we do still need, like, here's atheism. Oh, here, let me introduce you to Christopher Hitchens and all these, like, these books that, will put a lot of the things you may be thinking in a much better way. Yeah. Totally. Like, people are in different stages of where they're going through. For me personally, I'm kind of bored of that because it's so easy for me. Like, I mean, I don't even care to argue it because it's like, yes, obviously there isn't a fucking person in the sky telling us, like, obviously. No? Like, look at the world. Look at how shitty it is for everybody but me. Literally me. I'm the only one. Like, I'm doing great. But you guys, everybody else, it's shitty.
Fuck it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Just
No, I'm kidding. But we have so much privilege here. And it's like looking at, just watch Vice News once and then tell me there's a God. Like, one episode. Like, oh, well, those people in that country are completely fucked. Like that country I forgot existed until Vice News reminded me that, yes, they're like having to do, what was the one recent one? They're having to make like black market diesel fuel to try to fucking live because they're starving to death because everything's shit. Like, yeah, I mean, the world sucks.
Or like Puerto Rico right now is not going to have electricity for 3 to 4 months at least. In Mexico City,
And then there's somebody that's like, oh, I found my keys that I lost. Thank God for that. Oh, go fuck yourself.
I poured my milk into this cup, and it had just the right amount. Yeah.
Did you see that last minute football play? Had to be God. Yeah, definitely.
God.
No,
because God.
Fan, but yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. So to me, it's so beyond obvious that I'm not interested in arguing about it anymore. Like maybe if somebody, here and there, it can be kind of fun, but problem of evil. And then they'll have all these like set responses that they have. Well, it's consistent with the sin of the weather. Shut up. It doesn't make sense. And I know you have your whole system of assumptions that you invented to make it make sense, but I'm bored of trying to break through that anymore. Like, it's just so pointless, but I agree. Like, skepticism, we all decided that. We all know Bigfoot is fake. We all hopefully know that GMOs are good. And although that's something we could work on, that's totally a good place for skeptics to be working right now. GMOs and climate change, and that's all. Yeah. If people want to work on to spread understanding of that, I'm all for it. But like, you're right. Like, after we kind of agree on all this stuff, it's like, well, what are we doing here? I'm not, I think it also has to do with, for me, like, I'm not that social of a person in certain ways. Like, I don't need to go to a building. Like, a lot of people have that Sunday assembly. I think that's super cool for people who like it. Yeah. I don't need to go to a building with people. Like, I don't need to do it, because personally, for my personality, I just don't like doing that. So that's fine. So for me, like, what is this community? Especially when people are telling me to like stop being divisive over feminism or social justice issues for the sake of this community. It's like, well, for the sake of what? For the sake of your podcast or your conference? Like, I don't give a shit about your podcast or conference. If you're going to say shitty things about women or feminism or whatever, like, I have no interest in supporting you or, putting aside my differences for the sake of your thing. So anyway.
So you said conference.
Yeah, so that works as a good segue into.
Yeah. So you're going to a conference to share the stage with a gentleman named Carl.
And I don't know if you know this. People have been talking about it.
Yeah,
just a little.
Yeah.
So
that's in a week, by the way. That's
soon. Okay, that's in a week. Yeah, Dan, you're going. I'll just be in Maryland.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Dan's going too. So I guess my question is, just to lead off with everything that's been kind of going on, talking. How are you feeling about going?
Oh, I'm dreading it. I would love nothing more than to stay home and be with my new baby. I really would. And honestly, that's been a challenge, because every time this was really hard. I do my best to try to think and recognize my biases. And when Seth, I love Seth Andrews, but he did a weird thing. He did a weird thing, in my opinion. I love the guy. He had just, like, that Friday or Saturday, he had emailed me like a supportive email of like, hey man, you and me, we're going to this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, and I was like, cool. Yeah. Awesome. And then I even told him, like, hey, I think these people are shit. Like, Sargon, like, I think they're assholes and I wish they weren't invited, but here's how I feel about it. He's like, yeah. And then like 2 days later, he doesn't email me. 2 days later, he announces like, I'm not going. I'm like, dude, what? Like 5 seconds ago you were going. And I get his reasoning. It's because I made the same mistake. When somebody told me, oh, you could, instead of Ruben, who originally I was going to be debating, who I know a ton about Ruben, because I like to consider myself one of the first to recognize what an asshole he is and how his shtick, which is have on horrible white supremacists, benefit from their audience, and then pretend like you don't know what's going on. Oh, I just interviews, like whatever. But anyway, I I didn't know anything about Sargon. I hate YouTube. I know there's some great people on YouTube. I just see and hear the shitty ones, and I'm not interested in it. So I didn't know anything about it. But they said, oh, Sargon, he's super popular. I had heard of him. So I was like, yeah, he must be popular if I've heard of him, because I don't pay attention. And he's sort of the same as Ruben. You can debate him. I was like, sure, whatever. I'll interview him. I don't care. And I expected like, oh, we would do the thing where he says, oh, regressive left. And I say, no, that's stupid. And that would be it. But then I hadn't looked into it because I'm incredibly fucking busy with 5 podcasts a week and all this. So I figured, around 2-3 weeks before, I would start to immerse myself in this guy's garbage. And I hadn't done that. So I made a similar mistake that Seth did, in that we assumed that these weren't garbage people. Like, we assumed these were humans with bad views, which is what everyone assumes. Oh, it's exchange of ideas, humans with bad views. The only is speech, more speech, and then all that. But what is actually true is that Sargon is a garbage person who tweeted at a previous rape victim, MP, that he wouldn't even rape her. So he's a garbage person. He's not. So you don't go to someone who says, I wouldn't even rape you, to a female MP, past sexual abuse survivor, and say, you don't debate them. Let's discuss this idea that you just said. That's not, those people that's beyond the pale. They should be apologizing, recognizing that's an awful thing to say, or they should be people we don't socialize with. I mean, that's just a horrendous, disgusting thing to say. So but somehow people don't understand. Somehow I'm crazy for thinking this. I don't get it. But at any rate, I think Seth did the same thing I did, which was not realize that. And then once he familiarized himself, he was like, oh, I don't want any part of this. And he backed out within like 2 or 3 days, which I think was a weird thing to do, because he had just defended.
Well, because they a spot to speak, actually.
They gave him
right.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm lagging, but I couldn't hear. They gave him a speaking spot. Because
that was after he was there for the movie. Like, I guess the movie that he was in, and like him and a couple others were actually in the movie. Then they asked him to speak.
Yeah, because I think Aaron Rod dropped out, right? Or he was going to speak as a way of like fighting back against these ideas. Yeah. And I respect his ultimate decision, but he got there in a little weird way. And I think he recognized, he admitted like, I didn't look into this fully, and I totally get that. Like, I don't harbor any ill will, but it did put me in a weird position. So I had to think, oh, that's why I started the story. I had to think real hard about, like, once he dropped out, what did this mean for me? Like, should I drop out? Should it, like, what does that mean, if anything? And I had to battle the whole time, because what I would love to do more than anything else is just stay home. Like, that would be fantastic. I would love that.
It is the best.
I was like, I gotta not take the easy way out here, because just as a personal matter, like, I would love, my answer is always, I would love to stay home. Like, whatever the question is, like, my answer is that.
Right.
So I had to try to think, okay, that's in my brain there, that I really want to stay home. So try to put that out. And I really I didn't know what I wanted to do for a full, like, 2 hours, which is not usual for me. I'm a very decisive person in some things. Like, I put it on Facebook. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I could see it both ways. And then I ultimately, I have my reasons. I'm actually not going to give all my reasons, because it'll have to do with how I'm going to talk to this guy. But I have reasons that I think it's a good idea to go to this conference and interview Sargon / debate him. But it's a weird position, because at the same time that I don't want anyone to support this decision that they made, I also don't want to be alone there. Like, it would really suck if it's just me and a bunch of Sargon dicks, like, in the audience. That would be terrible. So I'm in a weird position, but whatever. If you want to come help out and help me not be lonely there.
I mean, yeah, I'll be there. And I signed up, or my friend kind of nudged me into going, because I knew Faisal was going, and Melissa Chin, a couple others. And I heard that. And I mean, Faisal's a decent friend of both me and Nats. So I was excited about hanging out with our friend Alice and Faisal and who else. And then all this came up. And so full disclosure, I'm expecting a fist fight, and I'm going to have like my Pages Manager app like ready to go with a live video on my phone in case like some shit goes down like that. Because I mean, what to expect almost whenever, especially like you said, like these YouTube people, and I'm not a fan of really anything on YouTube at all either.
Well, like cat videos.
Everyone does.
Right. Yeah. Well, oh my gosh. No, that's topic of another podcast. But I feel like these people, whenever you see them in person, I feel like it's going to be something where, you know, we have the safety of being behind a keyboard, and we're saying some pretty terrible things behind a keyboard. And now that we're in person, we're looking at somebody else that actually have to say these things to a real human person. Maybe it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little less distilled of an opinion that they have, or a statement that they make, or even when they don't have the benefit of being able to edit themselves so cleanly and so much, and take out all the pauses and the well, I don't know. I think it'll come off different. I think it won't be as intense, but I mean, that's also me trying to imagine the best case scenario, I guess, what's going to happen. Because
best case scenario, I don't know that that's the best case scenario. We'll see. I don't want to get into it because
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
way, but I don't know. I don't. It's a weird thing, man. It's a weird position to be in, because
I can see them either doubling down or easing off it. Yeah, you're right.
There's a tension between how people, like you just said, will act when it's their YouTube takedown video, and they can, say that all feminists are autistic, for example, and as a slur essentially on both groups. Is that
something he said?
Yes. He said that he has a video where he compares autistic people because of the following whatever bullshit things he talks about. He's awful.
Wow.
He's terrible. And then he'll do an interview with again the great whitewashing Dave Rubin, who comes on, who displays such techniques as, who was it, Richard Spencer? Was it Richard Spencer? No, the other guy, the British guy.
Milo Yiannopoulos?
Not Milo. The guy who was with Tommy Robinson. Where he'll go to Tommy Robinson and be like, I haven't heard, you seem totally reasonable to me. Nothing you say, like, just totally whitewashing these awful people, like that's his technique. I'm not going to do that, and I think Sargon's able to do interviews where when he has someone who's willing to stay in that realm because it's comfortable. Like, it would be really, the easy solution would be for me to just pretend Sargon hasn't said all these horrible things and just be like, let's talk about identity politics. What do you think? But that would be for my comfort. That would be for interpersonally my ability to sit there and be nice and like, whoa, we disagree, but you know what? But the fact is, I can do that with someone with whom I have just a disagreement. If you and I disagree on anything, I can do that. It's not like I hate everybody who disagrees with me, but this behavior is beyond that. Like, this behavior of harassing women and being horrible online is not a disagreement on ideas. That's not a debate topic. That's just awfulness. And I can't stand by it. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see.
Well, I guess just, my 2 cents, because everyone gives their own, but when I saw that you were going to stay and go, I thought, all right, well, I respect that and kind of admire that, you're going to get up there, have whatever kind of conversation you're going to have. And I think I said it in our episode that we put out. I think I used the words like, I'd like to see him intellectually destroy Carl, but like, whatever. I just think doing your thing, I know you'd rather be with your wife and probably super adorable little daughter, but you're doing God's work and going
the other thing is, like, this idea that he hasn't already been completely intellectually destroyed. He has been over and over. I mean, there's a debate that somebody sent me. I could try to grab the name of it, but it was astonishing. Let me try to grab that name, where I saw, and this was one of the reasons, one of the reasons I almost thought like maybe I shouldn't do this was I'm not going to do better than this person. There's a, what's his name? I'm finding it here.
I think that's the reason that Natalie and I don't do so many things is we go, well, we can't do better than that, so why even try? Or maybe that's just me and my anxiety manifesting.
I know this guy named Michael Brooks from the Majority Report. I wasn't familiar with him, but boy, he just absolutely crushed Sargon in a YouTube debate. It's so people act as though this just hasn't happened. Like, oh, battle of ideas. It's like he's lost. Like it's already, his opinions are just surface level. He doesn't have any policy knowledge. He has the same rhetoric about like Muslim belief polls, which are data that I think you can consider, but then what do you do with that? Nothing. And then he has this anti-feminist hatred, which you can see. That's rank his most popular YouTube videos on YouTube. Just go sort by view count, and it'll be him yelling at a feminist. He's just yelling, just like calling them stupid. Like it's nothing. There's nothing to it. So I don't. But what blows my fucking mind is that if I had to guess, I would guess 65% of atheists support it. If I had to guess, I don't know. Well, I wish we had good numbers on this, but it seems like the numbers are extreme that support this. And given that atmosphere, like let's just assume for the sake of argument, it's even 50-50 or 60-40 or something that support that, at least when they hear Sargon, oh yeah, good YouTube, whatever. Given that, I don't know that we can win by just deciding we won, like as much as I hate, like imagine climate change. There's nothing more straightforward than climate change. The science is straightforward. It's
happening.
Yeah. It's man caused. It's more scientifically solid than that smoking causes cancer. But what if only 5% of people believe climate change was real? Would you turn down a debate between a climate denier and a climate skeptic? Would you say, no, well, I mean, the science is the science. We don't know. Like, what if 20%? What if, and you can adjust that. If 75% of people believe climate change is man-made, you could consider like, well, it's not worth it. This is a fringe position. Scientifically, I don't want to give people the idea that it's like a 50-50 thing. But what if you're the only person? Like you can play with the numbers. What if we're 60-40 the other way? Then you might think, well, as much as the science is straightforward, as much as this is obvious, I'm in the minority. Excuse me, I did the cough button. I'm in the minority, so I do have to take this debate, even though it's 50. It's something that I wouldn't want represented as 50-50. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think it really depends on the rest of the community. And if we do live in an atheism community or a skeptic community where half or more than half, or who knows what percentage are anti-social justice or at the very least buy into this, like identity politics is killing the liberals and blah, blah, blah. I'll buy into that bullshit. Like that could be a 80%. I don't know. Like it could be a lot. And I do feel like, I mean, unfortunately, you can't just declare victory when you're in that kind of minority in terms of ideas. So that is a reason that I will do this debate. Now, that's different than if I'm an organizer. If I'm organizing a conference, I'm not inviting these people because they're assholes. They're horrible. Like, so I can't support. It's a weird position. I can't look at Mythicist Milwaukee and say, good job, guys. I still think that's not a good job, guys. But I'm not them. I'm the person who might try to go challenge it, so I'm going to do it. I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's a really weird.
It is. And I think because I'm, again, like you guys, sort of unfamiliar with the YouTube world, outside of just a few like friends that have channels or podcasts or whatever on YouTube. What struck me is not even necessarily these YouTube personalities, but their sort of legions of followers.
Yeah.
And I guess a question that I've been thinking about is these people have huge audiences.
Yeah.
Right. And this huge platform, and what is drawing like the masses to these people and their ideas and keeping them there, because they have huge fucking audiences.
I think it's a white people thing. I think it's not exclusively, But I do think it's driven by the fact that white people are a huge demographic, and specifically white men are a gigantic chunk of atheists. The vast majority are young white men, I think. And I think that the biggest problem I see in our politics and in the country is simply being mistaken when it comes to racial experience in this country. It's my view that white people, a lot of white people, and specifically white conservatives, but also these like kind of classical liberal people, think that everything is fine. They think that if not fine, they think there's an equality of opportunity. That's the line. Well, we might not get equality of outcome, but at least there's equality of opportunity. And a lot of people think that. A lot of white people, because they have their experience, they haven't looked into it. Things seem fine. You know, people are really sensitive about race. People don't want to, you know, like socially, people don't want to be discriminatory. That's frowned upon. And it is true that like overt bigotry, you know, Trump notwithstanding, overt bigotry has been something that over the years has gotten more and more unacceptable. It's very unacceptable in society, like overt bigotry. But systemic racism is as strong as ever in a lot of ways, for many reasons. And so when people of color try to, or anybody tries to talk about this and say, hey, why are so many black people getting shot? Why are so many black people in prison? Why are so many black people stuck in essentially like segregated communities where the zoning has made and the school zoning has been manipulated to make it so they don't have access to good schools? And so therefore that has all these effects. Why the crime is higher, poverty's higher, all these things. Like, hey, maybe we should do something to counteract this. The minute something is advocated for, which necessarily has to be on the basis of race, because, for example, black people in this country are getting a raw deal in so many ways. The minute you try to make up for that, you have to do it in a racial way. And then the white person over here who thinks that there is already equality of opportunity will say, well, that's unfair. Why are you giving a benefit based on color? I thought Martin Luther King said that was right, or something, you know, bullshit like that. And honestly, for me, I think it comes down to that. And the parallel argument works for feminism too. You know, like, there's equality. What are you talking about? There's equality of opportunity. All differences are due to choices that are biological or something. You know, that's what they believe because they don't have the knowledge or experience. And it's not even just experience. If I had time to write a book, I would write a book called The Data Made Me an SJW, because it really is true. The data made me an SJW. I didn't sit and say, oh, I need to listen to a bunch of perspectives. I think that's key. It's the way you become aware of this data, or that it even might exist, is by listening, and by listening to people's experience and by learning. But that isn't the end all be all. Like it's not as though the reason I think that mass incarceration is a problem is because some black guy told me or something. It's like, no, you can look at data. Like you can be scientific about it and see like, holy shit, black men are 6.5% roughly of our population and 40% of our prison population. What is happening? You know, and it's that's what's driving me crazy lately. And I really think that if you look at Sargon and others, their shtick, it's that nothing can be based on race anymore. It must all be colorblind. And so therefore, anytime someone is trying to use like affirmative action to fix something, they think it's racist because everything is supposed to be colorblind. Well, we're not to that point yet. We're not to the point where everything's equal. And I don't think we will be in the foreseeable future. So that's my long answer to your short question.
And that's such a interesting, like, because I know just personally, and I don't express my social views nearly as much as you do, or others, or nearly as eloquently as you do, obviously. But that's something that I've had to catch myself thinking is I sitting in my golden throne above everyone else, looking down on the peons, I think that, you know, have seen that line of thinking, and I understand their line of thinking. I'm not saying it's good, because it's not, and like you've just said, it's outright wrong. But I can see where they're coming from with that, and I understand that, but I just, there is such a confusing and complicated issue to try to get people like that say, because both and without us even fucking bringing it up, and this made me so goddamn mad when they both did, because it's like, this is at the end of the interview, both Michael Shermer and the organizers we talked to on Monday night when we recorded with them, they both brought it up, and we didn't say a goddamn word about institutional racism, and they both said, well, and people say everybody, or the Shermer said something to the effect of, well, people say everybody's racist, and I don't believe that. I'm like, fuck, why'd you say that? Now we have to have a conversation about this, and we're trying to wrap up, and I can't just let that
it's
go.
Like implicit bias. Yeah.
Right. The organizers also said, well, and then people like to say institutionalized racism. Like, this is Sean and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other name. Brian. Sean and Brian both. I forget which one said it, but they brought it up near the end of that the interview in a long kind of diatribe that they gave, that institutionalized racism doesn't exist, and it was, there was no reason for them to bring it up, but like we had to. I mean, it's like we
right there. So you're saying the organizers believe institutional racism doesn't.
I don't know which one said it, and I don't want to misquote
that. Whatever. Maybe one of them said it, but one of them definitely said it. That's your answer as to why this is happening. That's your answer as to why someone would think it's a good idea to invite Sargon of Akkad, because that's what you have to believe to find these people even remotely worthwhile in any way. Is you have to believe that white men are actually the victims in the society, because we've gone so haywire that we've gone too far. We've rubber banded, too far the other way, and white men are actually. You really do have to believe that to turn a blind eye to them yelling about feminists being stupid.
So then, how does that get fixed?
Right. You answered that question, and you went social justice.
I guess I have to write my book. The Data Made Me an SJW. Maybe I don't know when the fuck I'm going to find time to do that. Someone wants to ghostwrite it for me. Let me know. But
that's what it is, isn't it? It's putting evidence out there, right? In a way that is compelling enough. But you figure, why aren't people listening? But then instead they're listening to the YouTube rhetoric. It is frustrating, because
I think what's not.
Go ahead.
What's not helpful is people is the extremists, and I think that's what so many people who are on this alt-right skeptic or alt-right, whatever you want to call it. I think they take that the far extremist people who say that they're offended by everything, and they allow that to be the caricature for anyone that advocates for feminism or equal rights or institutionalized racism or anything like that.
Because I was just about to say it. I'll say it every time. Every movement has stupid people on both sides of it. Every issue has stupid people on both sides of it. And Sargon has made a career out of making fun of someone named Lacey Green, who I'm not particularly familiar with. I hear she was a feminist and now is the opposite of a feminist now or something. I don't know. But she's just not that smart. Like, to be frank, I mean, she had a huge following on YouTube, apparently, but she says a lot of dumb stuff, and then Sargon can use that to dismiss all of feminism because she's not particularly smart. And that you can do that if you want. It's easy, but then I can just go find someone on the alt-right and take what they say and then make fun of your side forever, and then nothing ever happens. Like, I try to let the extremists cancel out, and if that's even so. By the way, if that's even fair, which is not, because extremists on the right are fucking racist killers, and extremists on the left want trigger warnings. It's like it's as though that's equal, like as though that's okay, two sides of the same coin. I mean, there has been left-wing violence, but the biggest terrorism domestically just is right-wing terrorism. I mean, it's just a fact. Like, look at the crime statistics since 9/11. That's a different story right there, but that's also a certain right-wing, by the way, like far-right Islamic terrorism. But since 9/11, the biggest cause of terrorism, the most deaths have been caused by right-wing extremist groups. So, but even put that aside, even if we say, okay, the extreme right and the extreme left, we can let them cancel out, where are you left? And this is what drives me nuts about these centrists, who I think my speculation is that they really are just conservative in a lot of ways, but they don't want to admit it. Because if we want to say, okay, the far left and the far right are crazy, now let's talk policy. In my opinion, I would think these people who called themselves liberals, like they were liberals, but then the shouting kids at colleges drove them nuts. I would think that if that's true that you were actually a liberal, and then some kids hurt your feelings at a college, so now you have to be centrist for some reason. I would still think if I ask you about taxes, would you want the Democrats' plan or the Republicans' plan? If I ask you about healthcare, would you want the Democrats' plan or the Republicans' plan? If I ask you about abortion and female women's health
reproductive rights,
would you want the Democrats' plan? I think it's as obvious could be that you would want the Democrats' plan every time on that, especially if you're someone who, if you're to be believed, was a liberal a second ago. But that's actually not. I don't think that's what's going on. I think they actually are conservative in a lot of ways, and they're trying to hijack something. They're trying to appear. They're drawing people off of liberalism by saying, "Oh, I used to be liberal, but look at these yelling kids. So you need to come over and be like a libertarian with me and have some weird views about taxes and stuff like Michael Shermer, like all that kind of thing." Like that's what I think is happening. And that's what drives me nuts about this. If we want to let the extremists cancel out on either side, we can do that. Like we can say, okay, I recognize that we could take your Jordan B. Peterson supervillain, like postmodern feminists, weird, like there are people who I don't agree with, like who say weird things that I would think are kind of stupid on the extreme feminism left or whatever. Sure. Now we can cancel that out with David Duke or whatever you want to do. Like we will just let that cancel out. And then what are we left with? Well, for me, we're left with, I'm a liberal, and the Democratic Party is not perfect by any means. It's a billion times better than the Republican Party. So I'll vote Democrat every time. It's as simple as that to me. I don't know.
Okay. So then all right. Yes. Cause I think for me, I'm definitely like somebody who I'm not.
I think we can all agree that taxation is theft.
Okay.
Who needs roads that hold up after a couple of years? I mean, come on.
No, but yeah, but we do need $700 billion for our military, but we can't.
We do. We need more jets.
Yeah.
They are impressive.
God. All right. So we've talked about potentially, shitty ideas being given platforms. I'd like to, as I know we're kind of running low on time and everything. I want to think about who are some of the people whose ideas you feel like should be getting more exposure and getting the platforms and getting out there. So that's I want to talk positive future.
Well, mine. No,
yours. Of course, you're like me because I'm famous
not
in
me.
podcasts. Yeah.
I would say not me. I would say, I've been on a real tear lately in terms of interviewing women. I didn't even notice it until the other day. I was like, wow, I've had like 2 or 3 women in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is awesome. But it's embarrassing that has to be a thing I would even think about. But I think it's probably people I don't even know of because they don't get the attention to begin with. But I had Stephanie Zvan, I almost said Zvan, but it's Zvan on my show the other, I don't know when this will be airing or whatever, but it was recently. And she gave me a list. She was like, yeah, here's all these people, very highly qualified women who never get these platforms. And I thought, yes, give me the hell out of that list. Because I'm going to do the thing that conservatives think corporations would do, which is they think that corporations would hire all women if indeed there were a pay gap, which is a nonsensical thing for that idea that corporations would hire all women if there were actually a pay gap and therefore there isn't a pay gap is absurd, just to bracket that. But anyway, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get some high value, incredibly impressive women on my show who are otherwise being ignored because they aren't being given platforms. They aren't Sam Harris, but they have the credentials. So I think it's a real opportunity for me, and I'm going to pursue some of these potential guests. But I had Roberta Chevret on the other week, who's someone I had never heard of, who was very fascinating. I mean, the point is, I think it is the people who aren't often heard of, like with the people that you and I don't often know, because our discourse in the skepticism movement, I think it's getting better, but it's so often dominated by the same 4 people or the same type of person. And I think that getting that representation out there is really key. So I don't know. But in terms of people in terms of actual names, like I don't know. I would love if we want here. I'll put it to you this way: if we're going to talk about feminism, if we're going to talk about gender studies, instead of talking to Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay, let's talk to someone in the field of gender studies or who specializes in feminist studies or something, And if you want to balance them out with someone else, that's cool. But how about if we're talking about these social issues, get someone who has a degree in that, not someone who is a mathematician who has some opinions on about gender studies. Like, well, I guess if you want to consider them, that's fine. But shouldn't you have started with the field? Shouldn't you have started with the PhDs in the field, like just as a base point, and you can go from there? I don't know.
Well, yeah, being an expert or whatever you want to call it in one area does not mean that you're an expert in everything. And and I think that just holding certain people to the ivory tower status doesn't help the larger world always. It's getting the voices that actually know what they're talking about, or the ones, like you said, that, have something to contribute, a story that we haven't heard yet. And I think the more voices in the narrative, that's just going to be way better for everybody, because you never know what new voice is going to connect to some new person and try to make some kind of difference.
It's great. Alex Jules. That's some just short answer. I could have saved us a lot of time. Just said Alex.
Oh,
Jules,
all right.
Show, if you hadn't had him already, he's fantastic. I've talked to him twice on my show in rapid succession because you could talk to him for hours. He's a very interesting guy. I think he's doing fine. I don't think he may even be more platformed than I am. I don't know. Like, he's already doing but people like that who are not coming from the classical liberal white male perspective, like he's really fascinating to talk to, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that I don't know of because I'm just now trying to make sure I talk to more people that we haven't heard from. I'm just now getting into it and trying to do that. It's I think I've done an okay job, but I could always do better, and I'm gonna try to.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you coming in and talking to us, and I'm really interested to hear how your weekend in Milwaukee goes. And, I'm just kind of stoked that you're doing it and doing your thing. And,
I won't be doing it again. I won't be doing it again.
Yeah, you're just like, this is a one and done thing.
Yeah.
And
next year they do the same thing. I'm not doing it, but I'll do it this once and we'll see what happens. If people are going to go, I believe there's always audience feedback forms or some crap. There's something. I know there was last year because I was there last year. Fill out that you don't support this bullshit decision to have assholes on. If you are somebody who agrees with me and you feel conflicted about going, and you want to go, there is an option that you can go, but write a very strongly worded feedback thing. And they do take those seriously. Actually, I've been told that the group does take those very seriously. So that's an option too. I don't mind a clash of ideas if someone is just someone with some ideas, not someone who's an actual harasser of women online, so I don't want it to be thought that I demand ideological purity in all conferences. It's not that. It's just there are things that are too far, and they should be too far, and they shouldn't be in our discourse at all.
Well, on that note, can you tell people where they can find you on the internet and
Sure.
Follow your stuff?
Just search me on Google. Search Serious Inquiries Only on iTunes or Google or something. SeriousPod.com, and Opening Arguments is my other show. I highly recommend that one because I learn from Andrew week in, week out on that show.
We all do.
Yeah. You said you do 5 a week. Where are the other 3?
I do 2 episodes of Serious Inquiries.
Oh, duh. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
And then
I was thinking 5 different podcasts, which was blowing my mind.
Don't have 5. Don't worry. I'm good where I am right now. Projects. I've thought, I have ideas. I would definitely do more projects, but I stopped myself now. So.
Well, thank you, and enjoy your night, being a dad,
Yeah,
doing all that stuff.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we're going to